Welcome to the graduation ceremony of the Office of Inclusion, Diversity, and Equal Opportunities, Train the Champion Class of 2012. Yay! It is with great honor and pride that I welcome both the 2011 Diversity Champions of Train the Champion and the soon-to-be graduates of the 2012 class. I would also like to welcome our keynote speaker, Barbara Danforth. After 11 months of meetings, guest speakers, presentations, and dialogue related to various dimensions of diversity and inclusion, the time has come for the 2012 class to become diversity champions. As Hillary Clinton states, what we have to do is find a way to celebrate our diversity and debate our differences without fracturing our communities. As a diversity champion, you will be charged to stand up in places where you may be the only one willing to speak in the silence. Again, welcome, and I hope you enjoy the program.
Good afternoon. I'm so happy to see you all, so happy you're here. Thank you, Melissa. Before I do anything else, I just want to acknowledge my team because they're the only reason I'm able to stand up here. I would fall down if they were not in my office and helping me to do this work. So Melissa Burrows, our Faculty Diversity Officer, Robin Strong, our Manager of Faculty Diversity and Development, Janetta Hammock, our Diversity Program Manager, and Kim Yurchik, our Executive Aide. And we have another team member who's in a meeting, Gia Adine. We heard that she's going to come down, but let's just let her know we did applaud for her. But I'm so grateful for my team. I'm especially grateful for Robin and Melissa, who have just taken this initiative and run with it. And what I love about them is that they're always thinking about you. They're always thinking about you who are currently in the class, and they're always thinking about you who have recently graduated. So we're so pleased that you've come back here together. And if you read yesterday's daily, you know that we have now been recognized for this initiative. You know, sometimes you're working on something and you think it's okay, you think it's good, but you don't know if anybody's paying attention. So I'm really grateful that we had this opportunity to submit what we were doing, and we were one of 47 institutions recognized because they said, a lot of people have student affairs, a lot of people have initiatives, but they said Train the Champion stood out as something innovative and unique. I think because you're doing it for 11 months. You know, I don't know, maybe it's because it's overtime as opposed to 3-hour training and we think some magical thing happens. So like Melissa said, this is an ongoing initiative. You now, we are grateful, will show up as champions. And I was reminded of a quote that I used lately quite a bit. It says, change does not roll in on wheels of inevitability, but comes through continuous struggle. And this is a quote from Dr. King that I like because it says, this is not magic. Diversity as a national issue is unfinished business. We know we just finished a political campaign. We heard how people talk to one another. So understanding diversity, having civil discourse around these issues is important. And we're just glad to be hanging in there with you to help you do it. We have a speaker today who is a dear sister friend. And so my job is to introduce her and not keep running off at the mouth as I do. And so I'm so happy you have her bio. I just want to emphasize a couple things. I met Barbara Danforth when she was CEO of the YWCA. And as soon as I got here, I think she was one of the first people who hosted a dinner for me. And I will never forget that. She can cook, and she can cook well. But more than that, she has a reputation for hosting dinners at her house that bring new leaders to the community together and introduces them to leaders who have already been here. And I just thought that was such a special gesture. You know, I'm getting a little warm and fuzzy and choked up about it now that I remember that you were one of the first community leaders I met, and you were one of the first people who said, these are some other leaders in the community that I'd like for you to meet. And so that told me something about the kind of character she is. It told me something about she cares about these issues of diversity, social justice from a deep issue, from a deep perspective, and she's been doing this for quite a while. She left the YWCA, someplace I thought you'd never leave. I didn't think she'd ever leave there. I thought it was so much part of her work. But when you begin to network and people know your leadership skills, other people, as I always say, look in the window and see what you do. And they say, come join us. And so that apparently is what happened. She's now at Ratliff and Taylor, and she's their Senior Vice President of Leadership Initiatives. She also oversees their diversity initiatives, and she continues to work around town. As I said, her bio is there for you, but I appreciate how she's not a stranger to Case Western. The Floristone Mather Center for Women has had her as part of the Womenship Leadership Initiatives there. So she's a friend of Dorothy Miller's as well as mine. She knows many of us at the university, has done lots of consulting with our university. We have sent students to various initiatives when she was at the Y. As your bio indicates, she's been recognized around town as an influential leader. She's been recognized around the country as an influential leader. So I appreciate Melissa and Robin suggesting her for you today. I know she's going to bring you a powerful message. I know she's going to keep you fired up so that as you go out as diversity champions on our campus, and we don't see diversity work as limited to our campus. Case Western is an institutional citizen in Cleveland, and so you will have opportunities to network outside of Case Western, but we're so grateful for what you are going to do here on our campus and are doing already, and now Barbara Danforth will help you think about this in some new and exciting ways. Barbara, welcome.
Well, thank you. It's delightful to be here. However, I will say that, life is about choices. But when Dr. Mobley asks you to do something, the choice is to say yes or to say yes. So following that, I did what I was supposed to do, and I said yes. But I am delighted to be here this afternoon. And as I was thinking about coming here this afternoon, I was reminded that I am intrigued by the number of invitations that I have received recently from companies in Northeastern Ohio to come and talk to their workforces about diversity and inclusion, to talk to them about the importance of diversity and inclusion. Now, clearly that was not the invitation I had for today, because obviously you understand the importance of it, you understand the strategies, you understand ways for execution. But in many of the companies in Northeastern Ohio, they want me to come in today and talk about the importance of this notion of diversity and inclusion. And so when I go to these companies, I tend to start my presentations by recalling the very first diversity workshop I attended. At the time, I was working for Allstate Insurance Company, and we had a week-long series of workshops around diversity. And actually, that was pretty cutting edge at the time, because Allstate understood that they were looking to attract a diverse audience for its products, and in order to do so successfully, they needed to have culturally competent staff, as well as really have an understanding of diversity so that the workforce would be well integrated. That was about 40 years ago. And I say this because when I talk to audiences, they often come kind of rolling their eyes saying, why are we still talking about this issue of diversity? Haven't we solved this problem? And so when I think back 40 years ago at my first workshop, and then look at the progress that we have made since then, it is clear that there is so much work that needs to be done. So I attended this week-long workshop at Allstate. You know, we hugged a lot and we cried over the man's inhumanity to man, and we had these kumbaya moments, and then we, hugged for the last time, and we all went back to our respective workplaces. But as we went back to our workplaces, we went back to our own homogeneous surroundings, And there we stayed because we had not really been given good strategies for how to become an agent of change. And we had been provided with no accountabilities. So we continued as business as usual. Yes, we felt a little warm and fuzzy about this notion of diversity, but behaviors did not change. That was 40 years ago. So then I think about this somewhat tortured journey of diversity, and we move up for a few more years, and now we have the notion of affirmative action. So affirmative action, even today, is defined by too many people as a preference given to minorities, African Americans and Hispanic, who are unqualified, and giving them preference for job opportunities and opportunities at universities. And that preference is over the majority culture, white men and women, who are not only qualified but deserving of these jobs and these places in the university. And so one of the arguments against affirmative action is that you cannot legislate or create policies that change attitudes. And I agree with that. So we'll put a pin in that thought and want to talk a little bit about Norwegian countries. Make a kind of a leap here. In Norwegian companies today, there is a law on the books that says boards of directors of corporations must have a minimum of 30% female representation on those boards. Now, prior to the enactment of these laws, Norwegian company boards had female representation almost as abysmal of that in the United States. But now, with the enactment of this law, most companies have a minimum of 30% women on corporate boards. So I agree that you cannot legislate attitudes, but you can legislate behavior. So let's look for a moment at what this means in terms of the progress we've made around diversity and inclusion in Northeastern Ohio. As Dr. Mobley said, I used to work for the YWCA of Greater Cleveland. Make no mistake, it's the W that makes the difference. In case you didn't think that I was into gender diversity, I am. But when I was beginning to develop some programs around women in leadership, I did some anecdotal research. And 10 years ago, I was looking in Crane's book of lists, you know, the lists that they produce at the end of the year. And 10 years ago, I looked at the list of publicly traded companies. And how many of those companies do you think were run by women or minorities? Zero, that would be right. I then went to another list of the largest privately held companies. Those tend to be your family-owned companies. And how many of those companies do you think were run by women or minorities? Zero, that would be right. So here we are 10 years later. How many companies, privately traded companies in Northeastern Ohio today are run by minorities? That would be zero. How many publicly traded companies today in Northeastern Ohio are run by women? That would be one. Beth Mooney, Key Bank. How many privately held companies are run by minorities in Northeastern Ohio? That would be zero. How many are run by women? That would be three. So in 10 years, we've made some progress, but as I say, glaciers melt faster than the progress we've made around having women and minorities in top-level positions. So somewhere along the line, this notion of diversity, we've gone to the workshops, but somehow we're not incorporating it in the work that we do. So we have this notion of affirmative action, and even today it is being fought in our courts. This was a concept that was developed 35 years ago, and as I'm sure you know, Michigan is fighting now over its affirmative action policies as it relates to the University of Michigan. But also around the same time when we really we began to talk about affirmative action, we began to talk about this notion of assimilation. So in essence, what companies were saying is, all right, we will invite more women and minorities into our workplace because, well, I guess we think this is the right thing to do. So we will invite more and more of them and hire more and more of them. But they said, consciously or unconsciously. But if you want to succeed in our organization, you have to act like us. So by this time in my career, I had now moved to another insurance company. And what I understood, what I recognized pretty quickly, was that in order to be successful in this company, I had to learn how to be a white guy. And I did so with great skill. And so every Monday morning, I was in my boss's office with my colleagues, and we were talking about the previous day's football game. Now, I'm a football fan, but I had been promoted to the Pittsburgh office at that time, so imagine how painful that conversation was for me on Monday morning. Nonetheless, I was in there with my colleagues talking about what Bradshaw had done the day before, because I knew I had to be in their space, playing according to their rules, if I was to be successful. However, that did make for a rather schizophrenic person, and at the end of every day, I couldn't wait to run home to a community of comfort where I could be my authentic self, because in the workplace, that was not acceptable. So we move forward. We've got affirmative action, we've got assimilation. So now we move, as the time moves forward, into this notion called acculturation. So assimilation is the concept that minorities adopt the behaviors of the majority culture. Acculturation is the notion that the behaviors and the culture of the minority are acceptable as they are. So that I could come to the table in an acculturated culture with my authentic self. I didn't have to pretend to be somebody else. All of who I am came to the table. So then we began to develop this concept of affinity groups, kindred groups, where we had African American, Asian American, gay and lesbian affinity groups that come together to work together to solve some of their problems for the larger community. And so the early stages of this acculturation notion, we had things like Taco Tuesday, where we began to share our foods, and we had Fried Rice Friday, we had Hot Wings Wednesday, because somehow we felt that if we shared some food, then we'd really know each other. And so that's how this notion began to move forward. And now, fast forwarding up to today, we have what some would frame as post-racial America. Racial issues have been resolved. After all, we have an African American president. So all these problems around race have now been resolved. Well, as for myself, I see the election and the re-election of President Obama as the best of times and the worst of times. The best of times because, one, I am proud that an African American man has risen to be not only the President of the United States, but the leader of the free world. But more importantly, because his very presidency debunks a myth among way too many Americans today that African Americans are inferior. And whether or not you like his politics, you have to acknowledge that he has navigated this country through some of the worst financial times that this country has seen since the Depression. So I don't care about your politics or whether or not you like his policies, but just to talk about what this man has done brings pride to all of us. And not only him as an individual, but him as part of a wonderful family. Again, debunking myths. You know, the myth that the black family has disintegrated, it's no longer whole and supporting its generations. Here is an amazing black family to stand as role models for all of us. But I say the best of times and the worst of times. The worst of times has been the last 4 years when I have seen race relations disintegrate. I have seen greater polarization. I know that hate groups throughout America are growing astronomically in numbers. And his re-election, I believe, is going to cause continuation of that trend. So the best of times and the worst of times. And so as we think about this polarization of America, it's not only about race, but our method of communication enhances this polarization. We live in a world now where you really have to run just to keep up. The world is about doing things faster, quicker, faster, cheaper, and better. And we have to be running faster and faster to keep up. So now we start finding shortcuts in order to do what we need to do, relying upon stereotypical behaviors. Rather than my getting to know who you are of some group, and so let me just assume that this is how you're going to act. So I will rely or fall back on some stereotypical behaviors. But then when we think about our communication styles, we get to know people when we communicate, have conversation. But how are we communicating today? In sound bites, with text messages and tweets. And certainly, as Dr. Mobley suggested in this most recent political election time, I could call it something else, but in this most recent election, we see where sound bites do not add to information and understanding. They only enhance polarization. But that's where we are moving as a society now. It's not about conversation. It's about getting out a thought in as few words as possible. Whether or not you understand what I was saying is irrelevant. Let me just push out a quick note to you, and then I'll assume you understand. And so when I think about communications, and this is a conversation I have with my daughter who texts me, and then I have to call her up and say, so what were you talking about? Because she thinks that it's important for her to be understood. And I tell her, good communications is not about being understood. It's about understanding before you seek to be understood. So as we communicate, if we are to understand each other better, it's about learning new and better strategies of communication and holding those tweets and texts to a minimum. So that has been the torturous, I believe, journey of diversity and inclusion over the lifespan of my career. But I was invited here to encourage you and congratulate you on work well done. And so I want to do just that, but I want to talk about, as an example of the encouragement that I want to offer you, a favorite story of mine from the Bible. And it's a story about Esther. Esther was a young, albeit beautiful woman who through divine providence became the queen of Persia, which was the most powerful nation in the world at that time. Unbeknownst to the king, when she ascended to be the queen, or when she was selected to be the queen, she was a Jewish woman. And so there was a very evil man in the palace who wanted to execute all of the Jews. And so Esther's guardian, Mordecai, said to her, you need to go to the king and plead for your people. Well, she was a queen. That didn't seem like a big deal, except for the fact that by law of the country, if you had not been invited into the king's presence, you would go at risk of your own life. So she had not been invited into the king's presence, and so wanting to go there, she could have been executed. But her guardian said to her, well, and paraphrasing the Bible a little bit, life is about choices. And you can sit and do nothing, or you can go before the king and plead your case for your people. Now, if you choose not to do so, that is your choice, but we believe that someone else will be raised up to save the Jewish people. And then he went on to say, but perhaps you have been brought to this place for such a time as this. And that's the encouragement that I would like to leave with you today. You have been selected, not randomly, but you have been carefully selected because of your passion, because of your skills, because of your gifts, because of your centers of influence to be champions in this environment. Now, life is about choices. Your choice is to embrace the warm and fuzzy feeling and the new learnings that you have and go back to your office like I did 40 years ago at Allstate, and no more but sort of say less, because I kind of didn't have the strategies and there were some things at risk if I kind of got out there and said some things. So that is a choice. Or you can be the champion that you have been trained to be now. However, as Mordecai told Esther, if you don't do this, somebody else will. And so you can rely upon that. There's the class of 2012 They'll be the class of 2013-14, and so you can rely upon them to move this issue forward. But just as Esther risked her life, there is a risk to you for doing nothing. Dr. Mobley and her staff have done amazing work in terms of the diversity initiatives here at this university. It has taken quantum leaps forward under her leadership. But Dr. Mobley, Melissa, Robin, none of these folks can be in every crook and cranny of this university. They cannot sit at every team meeting to see and to hear and to be eyes, ears, and voices for diversity and inclusion. But you can. And so that is the challenge that you face. Are you going to sit back and wait for others to do, or are you going to take a stand against what you see and ways to improve and move forward the inclusion initiatives that have been started? So again, going back to my time at Allstate, we were not given strategies, we were not given accountabilities. And I suspect that during the 11 or the 10 weeks of your training that you have strategies and you have accountabilities. But I would like to suggest one strategy in terms of being an agent for change. So as I have come through my journey around the notion of diversity and inclusion, I went through various stages. And there was a stage early in my career where I was this angry black woman, and that everything looked racist and everything looked sexist, and I called everybody out on it. Needless to say, I didn't have many friends or colleagues that wanted to spend much time with me. But as I matured in the whole notion of influence, what I discovered again was it was important for people to be able to hear the messages that I was saying. Now, there are some words that start conversations and some words that stop conversations. So when you go up to a person and you call them a racist, that tends to stop a conversation. People tend to get defensive, angry, and they tend to walk away. And whereas I might feel righteously appropriate having called somebody a racist because they were, they are no longer listening to me, and so I've defeated my purpose. So now I've got to have words that open conversation. So rather than talking about a person being a racist, I now talk about unconscious biases, because we all have them. And it's those unconscious biases that cause us to exhibit behaviors that may have unanticipated consequences. So now I look to ways to be able to engage people in conversation and educate and inform them without them being aware that that's what I'm doing. For example, so you're sitting in a situation and somebody is telling a racist joke. You know, that's always that kind of quasi-difficult situation. So what do? You know, it's just a joke. Well, a couple things I would suggest. One, you don't react to it, even though it might have at some level seem funny. You don't react to it. But secondarily, after the fact, you go into the person who made the joke and say to the person, would you be surprised if I were to tell you that I was offended by the joke? And the person might respond, well, come on, it was just a joke. No harm intended, no big deal. And I say, you know, I appreciate that. We need to have fun in our workplace. But I want you to just understand from my perspective, what you said was very hurtful. And I don't want to, you know, make a big deal about it. But when you said what you said about the inferiority of African Americans, somehow people might think that that relates to me, and it just made me feel badly. So no big deal, but I just wanted you to hear and know that from my perspective, and walk away. So it was an opportunity to take somebody aside and say, look, you know, here's another perspective. I look at the world through a different lens, and I just want to help you, the person who told this joke, look through the world through my lens for just a moment. So let's take another example. In a team meeting, and as I said, some of the work I do is around gender differences, and in gender differences, there's a lot of research that's been done around gender differences in communication styles. And so stereotypically, when we look at behaviors and the research that's been done, the behavior that's in the middle of that bell curve suggests that men tend to be verbally aggressive and women tend not to be. So men will speak out and voice their opinions with great urgency, with great passion. Women will tend to wait till there is a pause in the conversation before they get into it. But as a result, oftentimes women lose their voices within a group, within a team situation. So suppose you're in a team and you know that Joyce is on this team with you and she's very, very smart, but also very quiet and soft-spoken. And so she's made a couple of attempts to get into the conversation, but the aggressive conversation around her drowns her out. But you're there. So your responsibility, your opportunity is to say to the team, well, whoa, it looks like she has something to say. Let's listen to her suggestion. So that's one way that you bring her into the conversation, to have a diverse voice on the table. But after the fact, go to perhaps the person who interrupts the most and say to that person, you know, I certainly appreciate the passion and the energy with which you voice your opinions. But the best of our team happens when we have all voices heard. So do you think that as we go forward in our team meetings that you might be able to open up space so that we have all voices heard? Again, you know, no lecture, no confrontation, said in private, and just sort of said, so do you think you can do this? So we go to the second team meeting, and once again, Joe, who was really aggressive, continues to be really aggressive and doesn't let anybody else in. So I do believe that you got to call out bad behavior. So if it were me, I'd go back into Joe and say, so Joe, I'm surprised and disappointed. I thought that you agreed it was important and valuable to hear everybody's voice, but at our last team meeting, I see you made a choice to drown out all the other voices with your passionate discussion of your ideas. So what is it about this notion of bringing in diverse voices that you don't think is useful? Well, he said, well, you know, I really didn't mean to. You know, I just get carried away with myself. So how can I help remind you that we need to hear from everyone? And so again, it's about going back to the individual and providing opportunities to educate them so that they can understand, one, that the behavior they're exhibiting is unacceptable, and two, how can you help them change that behavior? So that is a strategy in terms of being a change agent. We no longer have to jump up and down and beat our chest and yell out racist, sexist, because that's not going to be heard, not understood, and for the most part, it's going to be ignored. But there are subtle ways that you call out bad behavior and you help people understand a new way of acting. And then finally, the whole issue of accountability. Now, I understand that there's going to be some activities moving forward in which you all will be able to come back together. However, don't wait for Dr. Mobley and her department to create activities for you all to come back together. You need to do this because this should be your commitment to each other. As you get out into your individual workplaces, you will do some things that begin to change things within your environment. And some of the things that you're going to try are going to work fabulously, and some not so well. So when you all come back together, share the best practices, share the things that have worked well, share the things that didn't work well, toss around ideas about different ways that you might be able to engage people and do things, but make this your responsibility. You have now been trained as a champions, so now the department should be shifting its responsibilities and opportunities to your shoulders. So Dr. Mobley spoke about a group that I put together. And it's a group that I am really very proud of. It kind of came more by happenstance, but when I was at the YWCA, the mission of the YWCA is to eliminate racism and to empower women. And so my staff made a commitment several years ago that each one of us would do something every quarter to advance understanding. And so I grabbed hold of this notion that was in a book written by a friend of mine, Dr. Deborah Plummer. That might be a name that many of you know. Dr. Plummer wrote a book entitled Racing Across the Lines. And the premise of the book is that most of us work in integrated workplaces, but where real understanding happens is when we cross-racially socialize. So underlying the thesis of her book is the question, when was the last time you had someone who doesn't look like you in your home? So I read the book, and here I am, the president and CEO of the YWCA mission, Eliminating Racism. And so I had to think, so when was the last time I had somebody in my house that didn't look like me? Well, I couldn't answer the question because it had been so long ago, and so felt compelled to do something about that. So I put together a group of 16 women, 4 Asian women from China, Korea, India, 4 Hispanic women from Puerto Rico, Mexico, Guatemala, 4 white women, and they always chastise me because I say Jewish women, Christian women, Catholic women, so how come they got religions and everybody else got countries? And then 4 African American women. So we came together for a series of 5 dinner parties that were facilitated by Dr. Plummer. And the objective of these dinner parties was to do activities that helped us understand each other better. We talked about our family stories. Many of the women there, particularly the Hispanic and Asian women, were immigrants. And so talking about what it was like to grow up during the Chinese Revolution, to talk about the challenges of being Hispanic, living in Puerto Rico, living in Mexico, understanding each other's stories, to talk about my story. My great-grandmother was a slave on a plantation outside of Richmond, Virginia. The slave owner's name was Richard Hobson. You know, so I can track back my history as well. So we spent time just getting to know each other as individuals, because as I began to understand them more than just as professional colleagues, I was able to call on them to bring the best of who they were to the various tables in which we intersected. And so the plan was to do 5 dinner parties. That was 2.5 years ago, and we continue to meet because we have formulated a bond that is unbreakable. I was embarrassed when I was putting this group together. I decided I wanted 4 Hispanic women, and I knew one. So I had to go to the one Hispanic woman that I know to say invite 3 others. I knew 2 Asian women and said, you've got to invite some other women. But what I realized in this experience is how homogeneous my social world was. It was all of a bunch of people who looked just like me. And the only way that changes is intentionally. So I was asking Dr. Mobley when we were sitting down together, I said, so do you suspect that as people are coming into the room for this lunch today, they're going to find somebody they know and sit next to that person versus finding somebody they don't know and sitting with them and getting to know them? That's your opportunity. Everywhere you go now, you have an opportunity to gravitate toward those who look like you, or gravitate towards someone who is different and hear their story, understand them better, and help their voice be part of the wonderful array of voices that we need to hear here in America. So I am here to congratulate you. You've done amazing work these past 10 weeks. But I'm also here to congratulate you for what I anticipate will be incredible success as change agents within this university. You have to be the change that you want to be, that you want to see. And as you think about, maybe this is hard work, maybe you might lose some popularity, maybe people won't like you as much, just remember that you have been brought to this place, specially chosen for such a time as this. Congratulations and best wishes.
Thank you for using that word change agent over and over and over again. What I like about that story of Esther is that there is a place where it says that she actually thinks, if I perish, then I perish, which is something to think about because you're taking risks when you decide to speak up and be a change agent. So we're here to help you, and you're here to help each other. You're each other's allies when you start talking back at your office about what you don't know. So I really appreciate those were strong words, Barbara. Okay, we're going to call names here. And when I call your name, if you could please come up, we have something special for you. Alexis Melville.
Thank you to the staff from the office. Very much appreciate everything that you've done for us over the semester or over the course of the year. And just thank you for bringing some wonderful presenters such as Deepak Sarma. And today, thank you very much for speaking. So I think I've learned a lot. I've met a lot of wonderful people, and I hope to continue those relationships in the future. So thank you very much.
Amy Salim. Bryn Omabego.
I first wanted to say mahalo nui loa, a big thank you very much to President Snyder, to Dr. Mobley, and all the staff in the OIDEO for giving us all this opportunity to be in this wonderful program. This program has increased my awareness of the many facets of diversity, and I want to continue to apply this knowledge in service to CASE and to my community. And I wanted to share with you a saying in Hawaii that I feel embraces in part what this program is all about. Ike aku, ike mai, kokua aku, kokua mai. And it means recognize others and be recognized, help others and be helped. Thank you.
Cheryl Steiner. Chester Janik. Christine Kehoe. Gail Pape.
This is such an appropriate week for giving thanks. So I want to express my appreciation to Drs. Mobley and Burrows and to the selection committee for giving me the opportunity to be a part of this, to Robin for your wonderful organization and planning over the entire year, and to Dr. Danforth for speaking to my heart today. It's a wonderful program and I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Christine Samosi. Holly McGivern.
I know your name, Holly.
Just wanted to say thank you to the staff for organizing this. This was quite a feat. I can't even imagine what Robin had to do every month to get all of this together. And I learned a lot of different strategies for affecting change throughout the university and in my own personal life. So thanks very much.
Jennifer Ludiana.
I just want to say thanks for the opportunity to learn new strategies. I've learned some new things I did not know before. It enhanced my knowledge of topics I did know, and I think it will help me as I train and talk to people around campus in my job. Thank you.
Jennifer Sharf Deering.
I wanted to say thank you to all of my classmates and all of the people that helped make this possible. We were talking on the way here. I'm excited to be graduating, but I'm also going to miss seeing everyone every month. And I've really enjoyed the luncheons and been intrigued by all of the different things I've heard. I feel stronger in my voice and in the tools that I have to confront injustice and things that I see that are wrong. And my family's going to go through a trial period where they may hear more from me, but I'll be thinking of all of you as I test out the waters there. And so thank you so much. Thank you.
I appreciate that perspective. Sometimes in my classes, my students say Thanksgiving was a hard meal if it's their first time back home after they've learned some things that they want to try out. So we got your back. Jessica Landis.
I also want to reflect that thanks that we have this week, definitely for the program. I think it's very important at the university if we're going to make this a place where we want everyone to be happy and comfortable and really grow as a community. When I was thinking about what it means to be a champion, I think there were two pieces that I'm definitely taking away from the program. One is to have the confidence to speak up and to stand up for what we know is right now. But the other part is to continue to challenge ourselves to keep learning and know that we don't know everything, but it's important to just keep growing and learning. So I hope all of you take that away too. Thank you.
Juelina Jones.
I just want to say thank you for everything, and one of the particular workshops that I enjoyed was the generation differences, so I really enjoyed that. But everything was great, and thanks again.
Jawanda Rowe.
I want to say thank you. I have a cold, so Thank you, Dr. Mobley, for having this program, putting it together, Melissa and Robin, for everything that you've done. I learned so much, and I've already started working on some of the things we've learned from the workshops. I've taken them back to my office and shared them with my colleagues and said, we should try this. And so thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. You're welcome.
Kate Krause.
Just a quick note, I also want to say that I'm grateful for the opportunity, so thank you for all the planning and effort that was involved. An impactful session that I will always remember is one of the last sessions we had with the Diversity Center. I can't recall the name. It's like the NC.
The Site Center.
No, not the Site Center. The last session we just had where we watched the 2020. The bystander training, but it just, I think it underscores the importance. It really touched my heart just watching some of those scenes and, you know, putting yourself in those shoes and what you would really do, and just hearing some of the discussion we had and how other people would handle situations. I think that just gives everybody more tools for their belt. So I'm grateful for all the sharing that everyone has provided throughout the sessions as well. I think that's made it very important and worthwhile. So thank you to everyone.
Kevin Dwinger. Kimberly Paik. Kirsten Nagel.
My dad grew up on the south side of Chicago, and he'll say that he went to whatever church had the better basketball team. And my mom went to whatever church sang the most Christmas carols at Christmas time. And I've told different stories here about my own experiences where almost ignorance, because I don't see lines in so many different things, whether it's religion or race, or I don't see them. And I realized quickly in the professional world that it's not just as simple as what I see or what I do, but how I can perhaps help the people around me really be able to open up their own net. I told a story about when I first entered the workplace, and there was a gentleman sitting across from me who had dirt on his face, and I went to wipe off the dirt, and I didn't realize it was Ash Wednesday. I didn't know what it meant. So I mean, and in my efforts to try to grow, and then I had another boss who I was trying really hard, and I said, "Happy Rosh Hashanah," and he says, "No, it's not a happy holiday." So I continue to learn different things, and I realized that no matter what I know, there's always more to learn, and wanting to share more of that with the people around me. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Crystal Pate.
Just want to say thank you, Dr. Mobley, you and your staff. You're a compliment. Your department is a compliment to the university. And there's no such things as coincidences. We're all here for a reason. I just want to say thank you, and you've empowered me to stay a change agent.
Mary DeHaan.
This is a weird thing about coincidence. This morning I was thinking about this and thinking, oh God, I'm gonna have to say something. And I'm stopped at the light on Cedar, and you're waiting forever, and the bumper sticker, I swear, in front of me said, how did it go? The human mind is like a parachute. It only works when you keep it open. And so thank you so much for helping open my mind, and I hope to share some of the perspectives that you all have shared with me here. It's been fabulous and fantastic program. So thank you.
Mary Luberger.
I just want to say thank you to everybody. I thought it was a very successful program. Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you so much to your staff, Robin and Melissa. I thought it was very eye-opening, and that everybody was able to share their stories. Thanks again.
Nathan Fine.
I just want to say thank you to Dr. Mobley and her staff, Melissa and Robin. And I think what's nice about this training is that this is not something that's becoming an exception. It's something that is expected, and it's something that we do regularly. And it's not that it's just something that this is an amazing thing that's out of nowhere, but that we're really thinking about this on a regular basis. So I want to thank you all.
And I have to say, Nathan and I have talked about a student version or student affairs version of it, so we got work to do. Ryan Babb.
I just want to thank the staff for giving me the opportunity to be part of this program. The program really made me think about things that, I'll be honest, I never thought much about before, and it really opened my eyes. And it was a pleasure to meet you all and be part of this. Thank you, guys.
Simon Fritz.
First of all, thank you very much for the staff for having us. We really appreciate the class. Just a few things I want to say about mandates. In purchasing, we have the opportunity to change our contractual relationships with our vendors, and we've taken some positive steps this year in doing that, actually giving financial penalties for people not meeting targets in diversity. So that's something we hope to continue doing to the next year to really be change agents. And the other things I want to say, and actually TLC, TLC, the C is for courage, and courage is what you get after you try to do something and change something. L is language, because we have to use our language. And, and then there's the T. But basically, if we can try to act as change agents in our daily situations, we'll be better people, and we'll make this a better university. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Suzanne Healy. Oh, not here. Okay. And Vernell Henderson Willis.
I just want to say that, when it comes to diversity, there's so many aspects of it in our personal life and in our professional life. And I think what's really important is that as a person with the diversity that's within you, is to bring it together as one. So when you're working, living, thinking on a daily basis, you can incorporate it in your whole being and therefore reflect out to everyone that you encounter. And I just want to say thank you to the staff and to everyone else putting on this program at CASE and continuing with it. And it should be mandated for everyone because it's a beginning to change, and you change one person at a time. Thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn, for presenting the awards, and Melissa as well. That concludes today's presentation. I would like to thank you, Ms. Danforth, for taking time out of your busy schedule to present to this year's class. We hope you all enjoyed the presentation and luncheon as well. I first would like to thank the class of 2011 for attending, and I would like to officially welcome the class of 2012 as alumni. We hope this program has empowered you to speak in a compelling manner and about diversity and inclusion. As we move forward with the Train the Champion program, Melissa and I will be working on programming for alums, and that we ask that you can stay actively engaged as diversity change agents. Look for a special invitation to participate in the peer-to-peer mentoring program. So we really want to keep each class engaged. We don't want to lose you all. I'm going to miss you guys. But the beauty of us all working here at the university is that we can continue to work together.